Alrighty. Well, welcome to another episode of the OSINT Output.
It's a bonus episode.
The bonus episode. We actually have a guest on here. I've known him for, oh my gosh, it's been a while now. I think 3 years. He's one of the now, I guess, foremost dark web talkers and experts in North America, and I think Western Europe now. He just
Did
recently got back from the UK.
did you already start the timer? Did
Oh
we
yeah, you saw the timer.
Oh, I was looking into your eyes, man.
Again, just looking into my eyes. But Kevin, thanks so much for being here, man.
Yeah, I'm Keven Hendricks. I've been around the block when it comes to the dark web and cybercrime space as kind of a author, a teacher, mainly geared towards law enforcement, where I have been in active law enforcement for almost 19 years now. In my career, I've had the distinguished pleasure of being recognized as a subject matter expert under the auspices of the Department of War when it comes to dark web investigations. In tandem with my cryptocurrency certifications, which again, I've said this multiple times, like I never cared about crypto until I had to learn about the dark web. And then it was like, I had to learn about both in lockstep. So, I kind of feel like there are so many people out there who are such big proponents of crypto and have always been like these crypto aficionados and promoters. And for myself, my expertise kind of just came out of necessity, juxtaposed to actually being interested in it. And then I became interested in it. So it's like, I put the cart before the horse. I've had the distinguished pleasure of serving on two separate federal task forces under the different alphabet soup agencies, mainly geared for dark web related investigations and criminality on the different dark nets and the cybercrime space. My expertise in the arena of swatting has been quoted in the New York Times, CNN, the Washington Post, The Economist, NPR. I'm one of the people who are very big promoters of investigating swattings. I think swatting is such a huge gateway crime for a lot of the illicit activity online, and these actors that have since come into notoriety, specifically the nihilistic violent extremist groups. They're all swatters and doxers. So it's one of those things where you let them get away with it and then they just compound and start to push the envelope a little bit more. But other than that, any and every chance that I get where someone will sit down and listen to me, I happily will espouse the whys and wherefores of the colloquially known dark web.
So when it comes to dark web investigations and those task forces you were on, I saw that you were on with J Code, right? So
Mm.
what were some of the operations they conducted, and what were your involvement in
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, the Joint Criminal Opioid Dark Net Enforcement Group. So I was the J Code representative while I was with the Drug Enforcement Administration for the New Jersey field office, and we were part of the yearly operations: Operation Disruptor, Operation Saboteur, Operation Dark Hunter. They love to throw the TOR suffix in there or prefix in there somewhere. I think Spector, Protector, I think those were the latest ones. But pretty much that was a consolidated and unified effort of the different federal agencies to combat mainly dark web related narcotics, right? Like, that was the focus, the takedowns of Wall Street Market, the takedowns of Berlusconi, the takedowns of all these other different dark nets that usually were in tandem with those operations. And I can say that, back when I first started investigating things on the dark web, it was not under the umbrella of JCODE. It was under the umbrella of a different task force focusing for crimes against children online. And I was part of the operations that are well known, the takedown of the Love Zone, the takedown of the Playpen, which is known as Operation Pacifier, as well as the subsequent investigation into the site No Limits Fund and Welcome to Video, all of the things that are well known in the space that kind of add to the mythos about the dark web, right? Like, I think people still have these perceptions of the dark web that are dated to those timeframes of those sites that were operational. And I think that's what really creates this stigmatization about the dark web in general when it comes to law enforcement. We view it with those antiquated investigative techniques that existed at the time. And nowadays, the amount of technology that exists to assist the good guys in these investigations is beyond my imagination of what would have existed 10 years ago. So just to see the evolution of how these cases can be progressed, specifically nowadays going on 2026. It is just amazing to me that some of these cases are incredibly straightforward versus back then when there really wasn't an understanding of how, you could investigate the dark web effectively.
So when it comes to investigations and I guess your own projects that you handle, it seems like those Huntor kind of had it kind of impacted you as well with your own project that you have going on. So can you tell us about the Ubivis project?
Oh, absolutely. So, in my time with the Drug Enforcement Administration, when these, intelligence leads were getting disseminated to our area of responsibilities and stuff, I was seeing that there were a lot of cases that were handled or dealt with on a local level that had a nexus to this dark web criminality that could have been pursued at the time with just the facts that were at hand. And I think that there was this misconception about, cases related to the dark web, whereupon, local investigators couldn't pursue them. Or there were cases involving overdose deaths, whereupon there was a nexus to the dark web. Somebody had purchased a product off of the dark web that led to their demise, and local law enforcement just didn't pursue it. Maybe that's a symptom of a much larger problem with the investigations into overdose death and narcotics related homicides in general. But for the most part, when we were getting the intelligence that we were getting disseminated from under the auspices of J code, it was a little bit dated, right? So by the time we catch on board to something, it is usually, or I should say at the time when we caught on board to something, it was usually 3 to 6 months behind the curve. So I think that when I saw two specific instances of overdose related dark web purchases, or rather overdoses related to dark web purchases that were quintessentially dismissed on the local level, that's when I was like, you know what, there has to be some sort of issue here, right? Like there's some sort of breakdown in communication. And I think it was local law enforcement and state law enforcement feeling powerless when it came to these cases, and they just didn't know what to do with the intelligence they had at the time. Specifically a vendor name or something that they're getting from a forensic acquisition. Hey, this actor has communication with somebody on the dark web and they're going by this specific name. And as you and I both know, on the dark web, your name is your brand, right? Like your vendor name is what you carry, how people trust you, how people want to buy from you versus some newbie on the marketplace. So when I thought of the Ubivis project, I thought of it as a means of not only law enforcement being able to effectively report intelligence that was concerning dark web related narcotics or the dark web in general, but also the general public. I mean, if you have a parent that is trepidatious about going to law enforcement because their 15-year-old honor roll student that's got the full ride to Cornell or Harvard is buying Adderall or Xanax off the dark web, it's like, what are they going to do? Are they really going to turn their kid in, or are they going to want to look for another means to report them? Very commensurate to the actors online that are doxing each other, where they're reporting anonymously to law enforcement to fed their other guy, right? Get them feted. So I was thinking, like, look, maybe there are people who would want to report it honestly. Maybe there's actors themselves who have purchased narcotics off the dark web, and this vendor gave them a really bad product, and they wanted to fed that person, so they reported it to our intake of the Ubivis project. And I think that nothing like that really exists across the reporting portals that are out there, because there really isn't a focus on it in general. I feel that dark web source narcotics is very much underrated when it comes to how impactful it is to not only overdoses in our communities, but addictions in general. And I think that when you kind of have been in the driver's seat, like I have been, to see how much is propagated throughout our country from these darknet markets, both domestic and abroad, you understand that the dark web is just a huge component in the not only the overdose crisis, the fentanyl propagation crisis, but just in general, the distribution of illicit contraband.
I want to go back to the Ubivis project because I spent some time on the website and I looked at some of the reporting tips. I like the fact that if you're not law enforcement, you can be anonymous because the website says that you guys don't store IPs. What are some things that people can look for? Because like I grew up in a different era where we weren't ordering drugs online. It just showed up, right? Not to give away any trade secrets. But so what are some things that, friends and family members of people who have OD, like what are some things that they can look for to give them indicators that this person got, their drugs from the dark web, and then, report to try to get a case open?
First and foremost, I think that we have to dispel the belief that you're getting a superior product online, because that is really where these dark web vendors kind of promote themselves. That's their bread and butter, is that we are offering this superior product online. We're offering this enhanced quality control. And the way that that is our reviews. I have 25 5-star reviews. I'm a fast shipper. I'm a stealth shipper. Like that's like the big thing. How quick the drugs come from that order to your doorstep. And I think that is just in lockstep with e-commerce in general, right? Like I would love to see the statistics as we end this holiday season of how much was purchased online versus how much was purchased in store in person. And I think that is just part of this misnomer that's out there about the dark web, whereupon just because a vendor has these reviews, you're going to be getting something that's not going to kill you. And that is very, very much a departure from reality. And for me, I think with the dark web, you had these people that we have interviewed that were dark web purchasers that flat out said, it's much safer to do it. It's much more reliable. But when you really dive into the concept of safety, are you going to get robbed, walk into your mailbox to get the drugs? Or is a bad guy going to pop out of the mailbox and attack you and steal all your stuff? Or are you going to get arrested on your way to the mailbox? One of those things that we really perceive as safety, but in reality, it's not safe. You're ingesting the same product that you would be ingesting on the street. It just got delivered to you in a different manner. And I think at the crux of these investigations, you have this giant misconception about anonymity and anonymity associated with the dark web, because people think just because I purchased in crypto, automatically the belief that crypto is anonymous in general, no matter what coin you're using, it's all anonymous. And then the belief that there is no footprint of this parcel originating somewhere and then landing on your doorstep. I think those two things are of law enforcement's greatest benefit, because that is where we can find the most intelligence in any of these investigations, is where these packages came from. And then also, how are these packages paid for? And you're talking about auditable transactions on a viewable ledger of the blockchain. And you're also talking about working with, the United States Postal Service, which is the #1 medium where narcotics are shipped, or other shipping providers that are out there. So for me, I think that with the Ubivis project, it was really at its core about empowerment for people that want to investigate these cases on the law enforcement side, empowerment for people that might have been a victim of an overdose themselves and really wanted to out that vendor that sold them a pipe dream and almost killed them, and also kind of have a means for third parties that might know somebody that is struggling themselves with substance abuse and ordering their product online, to report that individual or those vendors to the to somebody that is able to farm that dark web intelligence and not have to call the police and get their loved ones or their friend in cuffs. So, yeah.
Oh, yes. And then I know. Well, first of all, thank you for talking about that and helping people, I think, identify some of those things. And then I'll just add in that my brother's been paranoid about everything his entire life. So the only thing that would scare me for him is if I find out he's not paranoid about something. Then I know something is wrong. So we're going to follow up. I know you mentioned Inspector, and I know that that's one of your tools for law enforcement. And then so one of the things that I've heard you talk about before, and I'll let you get into it now, is the investigating cryptocurrency can be a daunting thing, especially for state and local governments. So what's one of the ways that you see that moving forwards? What's one of the ways that you think that we can advance state and local governments in becoming better and more accustomed to it? And then how do you see the future of that going?
Yeah, I think when it comes to these types of investigations in general, OSINT is the universal language, right? Open source intelligence is the universal language. So if you learn about OSINT, I think you can transcend that into any type of investigation that you're doing online. So if there is any training out there about online investigations, and that could just mean social media in general, right? The same way that you exploit open source intelligence with social media is the same way you exploit it with the dark web. It's literally just a different way that that data is hosted online. And I think that being able to take courses in that space as well as fundamental courses with cryptocurrency, because I think for a lot of people, crypto is abstruse. They don't understand it in general. A lot of people don't realize how cryptocurrencies, and that's every crypto that we could talk about, all however million are on coin market cap today, right? Like there's certain underlying fundamentals when it comes to standard unspent transactional output coins as well as smart contract functionality coins. As long as you get those fundamentals, you can investigate these cases. And mainly that is getting wallet addresses or transaction hashes, which would be no different if you were investigating some sort of case with credit card fraud, right? Like you look at a transaction that shouldn't exist and you see the receipt for that and it says it was purchased here. And then you go and you investigate there who used this card where. And you could translate that into most online investigations if you have something related to fraud, right? Like I think in the crypto space, law enforcement in general is probably not going to get a bite out of a dark web case before they actually get a fraud facilitated by crypto case. So as long as you understand how these cases can be pursued from an investigative standpoint with crypto or online intelligence, you have everything that you need to really combat cases that have a nexus to the dark web. And I've always said is if you see dark web training, please take it. Like especially for law enforcement, we're in this weird space where like some people get voluntold to go to training, where it's like, hey, you're going to this. So right off the bat, you have this cantankerous attitude. Don't want to be here. I got sent to this training. I don't understand the internet. What am I going to do for these 3 days while I'm here? And I think that the more you understand how relevant this is to your life, especially in law enforcement, you are going to come across these cases. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, right? Like you are going to come across these cases. Are you ever going to pull over a car that has kilos of coke in the trunk coming from the border? That's very few and far between. Are you going to come across a case where, there's an overdose death, you have to deploy Narcan to save somebody? Or are you going to come across a case where somebody's walking in saying, hey, I just got defrauded. Somebody said they were going to send my nudes and I went to the Bitcoin ATM and I purchased $3,500 worth of crypto at that ATM. You're probably going to get those cases versus, the pulling over of the freight truck full of kilos up to the top, right? Like that's really something that's more or less a once in a career job versus something where it's like, I literally handled 2 of those cases last tour, right? So it's something just, I feel, once you understand the relevancy to how it is going to happen to you in law enforcement, then you start to understand why it's important to learn about it.
One of the things that I've heard mentioned before by actual dark web vendors, and I think yourself as well, is that people who card, they consider it a victimless crime. Can you kind of discuss what that means in terms of why do carders actually believe it's a victimless crime?
Yeah, well, that's a very deep conversation. But more or less, when you look at the fundamentals of carding in general and credit card fraud, one, you have somebody who gets defrauded as the victim, right? Somebody used my credit card in some way, shape, or form. All the AI enhanced mechanisms that are in place to detect fraudulent payments today are incredibly, incredibly high. So right off the bat, somebody buys something with my credit card and I'm not physically in that space. They used it in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and I live in New Jersey, and there's no reason to believe I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico. That transaction is going to get flagged immediately. And I'm going to get an email, probably a phone call saying, hello, we have a fraudulent transaction on your card. We froze your card. Can you please verify it right away? So for the bad guy, they might have already made that purchase that made that alarm, right? Like that they've already might have done whatever it is they need to do with that card and got away with it. And then probably within a matter of hours, I'm getting notified. I get that money back, right? They're going to be like, oh, that was a fraudulent charge. Okay, the money will be disputed and we'll get it back from whoever that card was used at. I'm not really going to be upset, or my card's going to get canceled. I'm going to get a new card and we'll just take it off as the cost of doing business with credit cards. The bank is going to write it off. Like, look, we do billions and billions of dollars worth of transactions each year, or the credit card provider company is going to write it off. We're a multi-trillion-dollar organization, right? We do billions of dollars in transactions. This really isn't impactful to us. So really, that's kind of the perception that this is a victimless crime. And then from a law enforcement standpoint, we look at credit card fraud in the sense where unless a car is like physically broken into and somebody's purse or wallet's taken from that car and the actual physical card is used somewhere with a point of sale transaction, they're not going to pursue that. Like, let's be very frank that is a case that is likely not going to be pursued. If somebody uses your card online, oh, somebody used your card, go to IC3. When I teach to law enforcement, you'd be surprised how many departments have adopted this policy where you have a victim that comes to headquarters and they say, okay, we don't take that type of report. Please file it online with IC3. And what do you think that person is going to do? You think they're actually going to go online? Like, they're going to feel like, oh, you know what? Maybe this is just the end of it. And that's why these actors are so successful with carding. Carding is just such a huge enterprise. So much independent actors out there, vendors that are out there that are jockeying for your business, and the threshold to get involved is incredibly low. You're talking about a very minimal amount of money, probably $100 maybe that you need to purchase a few credit cards and do a lot of damage. And these are sites that literally update like with 3K card, like $3,000 worth of cards, like every few hours. So it's just such an incredibly lucrative venture. And I think that's really where you see a lot of these actors that are coming up that becomes so much more dangerous per se, that do like much more impactful crimes later, is that they tested their toes in the water of these low level of entry crimes. That's really what swatting and doxing is too. They're very low entry crimes. They're very, very minimal skill, minimal investment type crimes to get involved with. And then you also have this perfect storm of law enforcement going, we're not going to investigate this stuff, right? Like, what are we going to do? We're not going to pursue credit card fraud online. The banks already, or the credit card institutions, gave the money back to the victim. They're not actively pursuing it. They don't seem to care. So why am I going to be going full speed ahead with this? So it is a excellent way for people that want to get involved in the online criminal world to start their careers, is with carding.
When it comes to swatting, I've streamed before. I've actually had friends who are streamers, and while they haven't been swatted, they definitely know somebody who has been swatted. Uh, can you discuss what swatting is a little bit, and then from the swatter's perspective, what's the benefit for them doing that? Is it just like, I'm going to troll this person, or is it like they're impacting me in some way, either mentally or physically, so I have to remove them? Like, what's the benefit for a swatter?
I think it's the LOLs, honestly. Like, I think it's them. Most of the swatters have their swattings live stream now. Like, it's very few actors that are not advertising that they're swatting. Most of them will have an active live swatting in their Discord channels, in their Mastodon channels, on their matrix.org channels, or on Telegram channels. They will do the swattings live. They'll have people tuned in because they want that bravado. They want the recognition about what they're doing. And swatting is just such a unique, in my opinion, crime, because it's like, it's not so much about telephone harassment. Like, I know when my parents were growing up, it was like, they make the call, is your refrigerator running? Well, you better go catch it, right? That old joke, or things of that nature, where now it's just evolved into this horrific landscape where you have actors that are not only calling police departments directly, but they're also utilizing the suicide chat lines. They're utilizing all these resources that are built to quintessentially better our society, and they're doing it as a means to swat by proxy, or they're doing it as a means of intimidation, harassment. And that really, that culture that built from swatting online, they very rarely understand just exactly what they're doing. They find the chaos funny. They find this, whatever they have done to be so profound and impactful, and then they're just laughing about it. And to me, there's no thing that aggravates me even more than that, because swatting is such a cowardly crime, right? Like, you're you're not doing anything like from a standpoint of other than turning on a VPN and using a VoIP provider, right? That's all you're doing, but you're acting like you've done something phenomenal. Oh, I called in a bomb threat to a synagogue, and that's hilarious to me because I don't like Jewish people, right? And there's often that nexus to it, that racially motivated violent extremist nexus, um, the anti-Semitic nexus. There's often that overlap there that we all, and I don't, when I say we, I mean like in law enforcement in general, isn't pursued with the full force that it should be pursued with, because again, with carding is an entry level crime. Swatting is an entry level crime, but you see these actors where it builds and builds. So yeah, maybe this disenfranchised 15-year-old started by swatting the synagogues because he thought that was funny and he was getting all of the fanfare, and all of a sudden he's getting a lot of uh, friends in the racially motivated violent extremist space. And then next thing you know, it elevates to maybe he's going to pull into the parking lot and wait with a rifle for people to come out. It's very possible. That is the continuum that you see, right? There's only one reason the pyramid goes up like that. It starts with that low level and then it just builds and builds and builds and builds. So for people who just think swatting is a nuisance and not a crime, you really need to wake up.
I think a macro case study would be the inception of raid forums, because that's how it got started, was as a place for people to come in, say, hey, I want to go to this Twitch channel, violate their terms of service. Somebody would ultimately get swatted, and then that website started attracting other fraudsters, other hackers, other con men to come in there and start posting their own information as well. So I believe it would be like a gateway crime, as you talked about, which is now we have breach forums as a result of raid
Yeah.
forums.
But it's even funnier because it's like for me, especially when I teach about, extremism and things, when all of a sudden the nihilistic violent extremist groups and the subsets and the individual schisms within that community come out. All these actors were swatting, like the ability to have some sort of interdiction from law enforcement very early on before these actors escalated to extortions online. You could have got them when they were swatting months ago. But you just write those off as, we can't investigate swatting. It's this pseudoscience of VoIP numbers. And, oh, I saw an IP address that was a VPN and a Proton mail address for registration. And I can't investigate this. And that is the breeding ground for them. And that's how they get away with it. And I can't speak enough. If you are law enforcement, you are listening to this and you have not handled a swatting case yet with your department, you're one of the few, because departments all over the country have had swatting cases. And whether or not those were pursued, that's really the $1 million question.
As a streamer and content creator, I actually set forth like an SOP with my family. If law enforcement ever randomly showed up when I was live streaming, like, hey, answer the questions, get me immediately. If they show up with guns drawn, like, do everything they say, because it is a serious consequence of being online and you happen to just upset one person. But well, one thing I do want to get to is being a dark web investigator. As soon as I say dark web or you say dark web, everybody instantly thinks of Tor, right? But you and I, both being dark web guys, we know that there's more dark nets beyond that. So can you tell us a little bit more about other dark nets that are out there, maybe some that are up and coming, and then if they're even feasible to investigate right now?
Yeah. Well, obviously, Tor is the most used darknet in the world, right? When we talk about actual sites on a hosted on a darknet provider, Tor is the best. And I donate to the Tor project every year anonymously. Yeah. I have very strong views about Tor in general that are positive. But as we can see, with nations that have become incredibly restrictive of what their citizens can and cannot view online, obviously Tor being the biggest and the baddest in the room, they have been able to block any type of traffic going to this network. So it's only, I want to say, natural that the emergence of other darknets have come about. Mainly those are peer-to-peer facilitated darknets. After the Cloudflare banning of 8chan. 8chan wanted to find a home, and they found themselves domiciled for a bit on the ZeroNet darknet, which is a darknet built on the Bitcoin blockchain. By nature, it is not an anonymous type darknet, but it also utilizes the Tor relay infrastructure to anonymize the traffic. So you have these kind of like, well, I almost want to say like mobile virtual network operators, like MVNOs, like Mint Mobile or Simple Mobile, that operate within the different like bigger networks like Tor and the I2P infrastructure that's out there. My favorite darknet right now is Yggdrasil. I love Yggdrasil. I think Yggdrasil is ingenious. You have people that obviously will espouse anytime you have a peer-to-peer type darknet, you can't have true anonymity because you're visible to your peer. And I think as we expand more into the Web3 infrastructure of the internet, that's going to be much more feasible to have anonymity in the peer-to-peer space. But Yggdrasil is probably one of my favorite. That's up and coming, still under development. The TON blockchain, the open network, and their domains that are parked on the TON blockchain. That's another one that I'm very much admiring. LokiNet, before it kind of abandoned itself because of issues amongst the devs about the Oxen blockchain, and then the session token, which is now domiciled really within another smart contract, Ethereum. I think LokiNet was brilliant. LokiNet was incredibly fast comparative to Tor, and you're talking about that same 3-hop infrastructure, the entry, middle, and exit nodes that the Oxen blockchain employed. One of the darknets, though, that's not really a darknet because there isn't so much any type of data that's solely hosted on it, but the NYM, they're doing a phenomenal job with their VPN type service out there. Their MixNet infrastructure built in there. Again, it's very, very slow when you're doing that, but it's just phenomenal to think that this is readily at your fingertips when the darknet in general used to be this almost impossible thing to access without a good amount of knowledge of how to set up your proxies and your Stocks 5 hosts and things of that nature. So yeah, I would say that if you just think Tor is the be all end all of the dark web, you're very much dated. And you and I both know, Hyphenet, Freenet, still around, still strong, not as traversed as it once was. But I would say that, I2P isn't going anywhere. I2P is still building on it. Yeah, there's just so many different darknets that are available to you at your fingertips. Urbit, that's another interesting one. I like Urbit a lot. You have to download your own NFT and then bridge that into the network. But that's this is just, in my opinion, this is about the future of Web3 and ownership. And then with the new Web3 infrastructure of the internet, it's only natural that you have these darknets that exist utilizing that same infrastructure.
Whenever I think of Freenet, I always think of their messaging service that they have, because I've always seen investigations start going, especially when they're child sexual abuse material investigations, CSAM investigations, they go towards that. When it comes to CSAM and human trafficking in general, I've seen you mention Aaron West a lot during that, and her very outspoken advocacy. There we go. Her outspoken advocacy regarding law enforcement ability to investigate all of these, not just on the dark web, but the open web in general. When it comes to CSAM investigations in her project, how would you akin your Bivis project towards her? Because I've heard you say, like, I want to be the loudest in the room when it comes to these investigations. Like, what do you think about?
Yeah, of course. Erin, a woman I incredibly admire. Erin is somebody that, is a close friend of mine now. And just what Erin did in terms of her raising the alarm of the fact that these cases are not being investigated. There's people that are killing themselves, mainly specific to pig butchering. But then when you talk about pig butchering, it's like, well, who's behind these scams? Well, lo and behold, South Asian countries and having labor trafficking, human trafficking problems of who are the people that are on the other end of those phone calls, who are the people that are actually facilitating the scams. They themselves are victims of a much larger criminal syndicate that has their tentacles in all different kinds of avenues of criminality. And for me, I think CSAM in general, child online exploitation or child exploitation in general is such a rallying cry for so many people to get involved because I feel that you have these nonprofits, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, Thorn, all of these different nonprofits that are nonprofits and NGOs that are actively attacking this. And then you have these individual ICAC task forces all across the country. And then you have the federal partners all across the country. And I think that when it comes to the dark web in general, the approach isn't the same as it is when it comes to what these task forces and these NGOs handle, because a lot of that stuff you actually have to be either proactive to get access to, or like you have to be prevalent or have some sort of access to a lot of these closed off messaging boards, right? Like the litter box. You have to have a membership on the litter box. You're not going to be able to view what's being posted on the forums. And that's one of those darknet services where the CAPTCHAs are actually CSAM, and you have to solve the CSAM CAPTCHAs to get access to the forum. So I think when we have these task forces you will find no other busier task forces across the country than the online, the ones that combat online exploitation of children. The amount of cases that they get proactively assigned by tips that are generated by the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, or stuff that was directly resulted from some undercover chat operations and things of that nature. There are more arrests than I think would make people feel comfortable in that space. But for me, with dark web related drugs, it's just like there isn't that unified effort, right? Like, and I don't know why. I think that if there was half that, and I've said this before, if there was half the effort to combat online drugs that there is to combat online child exploitation, we would effectively put these markets out of business. They would have to gravitate more and more underground, like the child abuse forums have, where you almost have to have that onion token to even access the URL. And that's what the pedo support forum did, where now to find the link isn't enough. You have to have that token shared with you to paste in there to even get access to the site. Like, just think about how that would change everything. Just think about when you have somebody who's trying to buy drugs online, to make it that much harder, you would effectively close that avenue for them. And I feel that I'm only one person. I can only say so much, and I think that what I've done in the publications I put out there, that hasn't even scratched the surface. Because to this day, you still have cases where, even though you could Google, how do I investigate a dark web related case, right? Like, you could literally Google it, and like so much will come to you at the tip of your fingertips. They will still be like, yeah, no one understands that stuff. I was privy to a case where not the prosecutor, because in New Jersey we have, different counties, and the counties have different prosecutors. On a state level, we have the Attorney General's office, and then we have assistant attorney generals. But basically, it was a case that was handled on a local level, and the assistant prosecutor said, like, we don't want to send these cases to trial because juries don't understand the dark web and juries don't understand crypto. And they got away with it. Like, they basically took a deal that was nauseating, when these were like dark web criminals. Like, these were people that made a significant amount of money, laundered it. But because, like, you say that juries won't understand crypto and the dark web, like, that's such a out for them. And it's a much larger problem that I think really need to be looked at by people that are elected into office.
So I was doing some reading, and you went to Montclair State University in New Jersey, with Rocky the Red Hawk, by the way. That's the mascot there. As I'm sure you know, probably about 30 years before you went there, Bruce Willis went there. And I'm assuming that you got inspired to get into law enforcement because of B. Willie and his movies.
I don't even think he lasted half a semester there, and we gave him an honorary degree. We gave Bruce Willis an honorary degree. He deserves it. Yeah, Bruce Willis. It's very weird at Montclair State because I don't think there are a lot of people that they can hang their hat on as being like these super well-known, successful people in pop culture, right? And it's just like we always joke that Bruce Willis went there and ate like the food that we have at the he ate the food at the mess hall and then just was like, I'm out of here, right? Like, no, I don't know why Bruce Willis didn't last more than a semester or two at Montclair State. It's a great university. I actually wound up going there after my freshman year, which was at Sacred Heart University in Fairfield, Connecticut. And I had gone there for the purpose of wrestling. So I went from a Division I school down to a Division III school. And then the year I got there, they wound up doing away with the wrestling program. So I wound up transitioning away from athletics into, my fraternity frat bro life. And that's when I first learned about this internet that, this was 2005 and 6. So obviously Bitcoin and things wasn't there exist back then. But I had learned that there was kind of this underlayer of the internet that existed at the time. And then lo and behold, my fraternity brother wound up telling me years later at an alumni event about, how he buys drugs on the dark web, which was the Silk Road, and mainly pot. But he was buying that stuff online, telling me all about it. And then some odd years later, I'm assigned to a task force where it's like, hey, we're going after different actors on the dark web. So it's like, even though my fraternity brother was buying drugs off the dark web, it was like, well, now I'm on the dark web, but I'm going after actors that are trading CSAM material. So it was just maybe it all makes sense in some sort of, cyclical version that we look at life. Maybe that all made sense, right? Like, who knows? If the wrestling program didn't wind up getting disbanded, then maybe I wouldn't have joined a fraternity, and then maybe I never would have learned about the dark web existing back in like 2005, 2006, and then who knows? But yeah, Montclair State, go Red Hawks.
Oh yeah, their mascot was Rocky, right? The Red Hawk, I think.
I didn't even know. No, that's funny because I didn't even know it had a name. I thought we were just the Red Hawks. Like, I didn't think it. I did not know it had a name. So that might be something newer to
Oh, yeah.
me.
So did you when you went there, did you major in criminology or any of that? Like, what was your focus while you were there at Montclair?
So that's actually funny. I was very close to what you would equate to be an archaeology degree. Mainly this kind of hodgepodge of theology, history, and something along those lines because they didn't have a de facto archaeology degree. And I was close to pursuing becoming a deacon in the church. I've always been a person of strong faith. And I wound up graduating with something that was called humanities, which it's not like general, like that's what people like equate it to is like almost like a communications degree, right? Like a general degree. And it really wasn't. It was a lot of focus on philosophy. There's a lot of focus on different world cultures. I remember one of the essays I had to write in one of my classes was about feminism within the Muslim culture. So like it was very much a exposure to a lot of different religions and exposures to a lot of different beliefs and things of that nature. So I graduated with a humanities degree, and like I think that a lot of people when I say that. They kind of equate it to like basket weaving for like the football players when they go through school at the Division I schools, but it really wasn't. It was the closest thing I could have gotten at the time to what I wanted to pursue. It's something that I think is incredibly still relevant to me in my space, because in law enforcement, what we always focus on is the who, what, where, when, and how, right? Like that's like all we really need to prove. We don't want to understand why. And that's one of the things where it's like I think I've found my niche in trying to unravel that. It's like these NVE actors online, why? Why are they doing this, right? Why? It's not about financial gain. It's not about any of that. So yeah, I think it's very much relevant to my my deeper thoughts that sometimes I have when it comes to the grand scheme of things. And yeah, I just never I'd always envisioned myself going into maybe into public service if I were to be working in that space. My father was a public servant for 36 years. So it's just one of those things where it's like, my mom was a school teacher, so they themselves were like public servants. And I saw maybe that I would see myself in that space. And it just so happened that that's the career I fell into. But yeah, I was pursuing maybe becoming a deacon within the church.
So, you mentioned NVE, right? And I've heard that term before, but for our listeners, can you kind of give us a definition of that and what their, I won't say movement, but what their mindset and motivations are?
The holistic violent extremism. This is the new forefront. The best way I could describe it is that line from, The Dark Knight, where he talks about some people just want to watch the world burn. And that's really what it is. These are actors and they're usually juveniles. Like that's what I want to dispel too, is like the belief that it's some 30-something-year-old Satanist living in his parents' basement, killing cats in the woods. And maybe there's people that are in line with those movements that are like that. But this is pretty much, nothing really matters. Do whatever you want. You're just as big as your e-penis, right? How many people you've swatted, how many people you've got termed on Discord, how many people you've feted and doxed, and also exploiting the most vulnerable of the vulnerable population. Going on the self-harm Twitter or eating disorder Twitter and going after these actors that are not actors, after these victims that are struggling. Like people that they themselves are on the autistic spectrum, trying to get a autistic kid to shove a remote control up his butt, object rape himself out of the joy, to find that funny, or to try to get a 13-year-old girl with Down syndrome to drink bleach on a live stream with you because they find that funny. And that's really what you're dealing with when you're in that community. And it's sad. It really is. It's incredibly disheartening. And I think it's also something where for us in law enforcement, we always envision the bad actor on the other end of the keyboard, right? Like you always envision this monster of a human behind the other end of the keyboard. And then it turns out to be they themselves a bullied autistic kid that found this stuff to be funny and thought he had camaraderie and friendship amongst this other group of actors that were doing it for the LOLs. And that is really where I think it's scary. There's so much more to this than online extortion. There's school shootings, there's mass shootings, there's things that have a nexus to these NVE movements. And it's really something too, where I think law enforcement has to learn about this and has to understand, the different avenues these actors pursue, like swatting. Like that's what these guys do. Like they love to swat. They find that funny. They have their own swatting live streams. The rash of school shootings across the college, rash of school shooting threats to the colleges across the country over the summer, that was an NVE group. So it's just like we need, and again, I say we in this collectivist law enforcement aspect, but we do need to understand that this movement isn't just about 764. This movement isn't just about these actors that are in the news and categorized now as terrorist organizations in Canada. There's much more to this, and that's just the tip of the iceberg.
When you're saying we, you're talking about law enforcement, but I feel like, since there are mediums that where a lot of this content is hosted, do you feel that maybe some of those platforms and even some telecommunication carriers, should they probably be held responsible for some of the activity that occurs there? Or should they try to moderate their content better, and try to find these actors before an event like, a suicide, a death occurs?
Yeah, I don't think that is an easy answer for me. My personal opinion, I think we always have this scapegoat. Um, we always look for the scapegoat, right? We always have we want to put the blame on something. We always want to put the blame in a singular front, right? Like it's such a, in my opinion, it's very easy to try to blame Roblox, right? It's Roblox's fault. It's like, well, listen, they're not just operating on Roblox; they're on Minecraft too. A lot of the swattings that happened during during the time frame before Roblox happened because of Minecraft. The whole Anna Senpai Marani worm that broke the internet was over Minecraft DDoS protection arguments, right? Like, so let's just stop pretending like it's Roblox's fault, okay? And that's what aggravates me is when it's just like, oh, 764 is Roblox's fault. It's like, well, he founded on Discord back in 2015. So is it Discord's fault now? Like we love to pull the scarecrow from the Wizard of Oz and point the fingers everywhere, but accept that ourselves, right? And that's where we need to have that cathartic moment to be like, what more could be done? And I think it's like, well, guess what? Maybe this kid that just shot up a school, maybe we should have arrested them or charged them when they were swatting 2 years prior, right? But then we just try to find the scapegoat. We try to go, oh, it's Roblox's fault. And it's not. Like, and for me to think that there's better moderation that could happen, absolutely. There's 100% better moderation that could happen. And I think those efforts that were put in place, these actors find a way to circumvent them. It's like, even within the fraud space, you and I both know, it's like, what's the big thing now that these fraud actors want? Are people turning their heads like this, right? Because why? That's the new effort for KYC. Turn your head to the left, turn your head to the right. Those are literally for sale on these docs and scans websites now. It's like we have the people turning their heads as a means to defeat the KYC. So putting an effort in place is great, and I will agree. That helps out a lot, right? If you're under a certain age, you can't chat. Okay, you did it. Is it your fault that some 15-year-old figured out a way to beat it? Like literally, you and I have seen the videos of people that are using video games, like video game in like WWE 2025 to have the wrestlers turn their heads and open their mouths as a mean to defeat the KYC and are you a real person verifications. So I think at the end of the day, the failures are not so much where we want to put them on, big tech, right? Like big tech's an easy scapegoat. Well, let's blame big tech. The failures are also us as a collective, us in law enforcement adjacent nonprofits, not understanding exactly where this stuff is coming from and the efforts that could have been done to prevent it, right? The preventative measures that could have been out there.
So with that, if people want to reach out to you like that, where can they reach out to you? So we already talked about the Abivis project. Is that the only place they can reach out to you? Do you have any other socials you want to put out there?
Yeah, if you buy a Ouija board and you say my name 5 times in the mirror. No, I'm out there on LinkedIn. You want to reach me, my Keven@ubivisproject.org is a great way. I'm on Telegram. I'm on Talks. I'm on Session. I'm everywhere. I think that what most people what most people misconceive about my message is that the dark web is a bad place, and it's not. I'm the first person that will tell you that aggravated me the most when I was coming up in this training was like, you need 7 different VPNs and to be in an airtight chamber and just to log on to Tor. And I was like, no, you don't. Like the average user is not doing that, right? The average user of Tor, the average criminal is not going through all these preventative measures when they log online. Does that lead to OPSEC failures? Not always the case, right? Like, yeah, of course there's these OPSEC time bombs that are out there. 100%, I will agree with that. But from a standpoint of just being successful on the dark web, you have a lot of people that, don't go through those preventative measures, that aren't running, a virtual machine within a cloud environment to just go on Tor. And I think what I want to espouse out there is just not how much information is out there for you on the dark web, but also the accessibility of the dark web. Like, don't think that this is something that you can never go on. Don't think that this is something that is unreachable for you in terms of law enforcement to effectively investigate these cases, because you can't. And I just honestly think that as a whole, law enforcement has failed to progress their knowledge on the dark web ever since Ross Ulbricht got arrested, ever since Ross Ulbricht got arrested, now he's pardoned, he's out, but somehow we still view the dark web as the 2012 and 13 version of what the Silk Road was. And we shouldn't be doing that because the dark web has evolved significantly. The threat actors have evolved significantly. But somehow we in law enforcement, we just haven't, our growth in the space got stunted. And I just want it to change. And I want it to be something where you have these families that are getting these closures now. You have the families that see, the actors getting arrested for the drugs that were dealt to their loved ones when they wound up dying from ingesting it, believing they were getting a superior product. It's just, there's just a lot of things that I feel just need to progress that for whatever reason haven't.
And one thing I will say to our listeners, the very first time I met Keven, it was about 3 years ago now.
Oh yeah.
And we were down in New Orleans, and
No. You're wrong.
Oh.
You met me up in Suffolk County.
Oh, yeah, that's right. We met there. We met at Suffolk County
Yes.
at a conference. And but to talk more about Kevin's approachability, that's right. We were down in New Orleans at this time because he came up and he introduced himself, and because there was one person he hadn't met before, and he said, "Hey, if you want to talk more about," I think it was Telegram at the time, you're talking about encrypted messaging. And he said, "Hey, if you want to know more about this, I'll be over there in a green suit." And everybody I saw walk away from his table were smiling like they had a great time. So if anybody thinks that Keven isn't approachable, because nothing can be more from the truth. He loves talking about his investigations, what he's done, and training people.
Yeah. And I'm the first person to tell you, I'm always learning. I am. I haven't reached this apex of know-it-allism when it comes to the dark web. And I think also, especially for some people that need to be humbled in this space, they have that approach, like, I know everything, right? Like the SNL skit with Jimmy Fallon being Nick Burns, your company's computer guy. He knows everything, right? And some of my favorite audiences to talk about this stuff to are the hacker folks, the folks at, the equatable to the DEF CONs and the B-sides and things of that nature, because a lot of them are those people, very smug and things of that nature, where it's like, they have a lot of anti-government views to begin with, and things of that nature. And then it's just like, to think that, okay, you're great at running Linux, you're great at doing all these different things that I'm not good at doing, but let's talk about how much I can do on the dark web and how much I can do with the skills that I have with not the same skill set you have. And then we'll see at the end of the day, who is the ultimate, who has the bigger e-penis, right? And 9 out of 10 times, it's like a lot of these actors is like, oh, I don't go on the dark web. That's like, that's great. Why don't you go on the dark web? The Tor is broken. Tor is owned by the feds. I don't go on the dark web at all. I'm like, oh, okay. That's great. And like what they're talking about is great in what they do, but it's just like, I just feel that, especially in the computer space where you have folks that are kind of maladjusted socially to begin with, they've reached they feel like they've reached the apex of computerdom. And, I just love going to those conferences and just like blowing their mind sometimes, because it's like they've been so great at whatever they've been doing, but they just didn't have that open mind about this corner of the internet because they viewed that as beneath them. Right? It's great. I love it. I love what I do. I've been incredibly blessed to be able to even be on a podcast like this, to speak at those conferences. I've been incredibly blessed. And my biggest thing is empowerment. I want to empower people walking away, not only to understand what I'm talking about, but to pursue it further and be like, hey, maybe there's something I can do with this, right? Maybe this is something that I will be able to translate into whatever skills that I have and be better at my job.
Thanks so much, Keven. I really appreciate you being here, man. Any parting words, any final thoughts for our listeners?
You know what? I would say this. If you're not on the dark web, just go on it. Please. You're not going to go online and then all of a sudden child sexual abuse material is being thrown at you, or you're not going to go on Tor and Vladimir Putin's going to pop up on your screen and steal all your crypto, right? Like, That's not what happens. And I think that we compartmentalize that into pop culture because it is like the dark web is part of pop culture today. If you don't believe me, watch Unfriended 2, Dark Web. The perceptions that we have about the dark web is part of the pop culture. And I think it's just important for people in general, one, to understand the dark web, and two, to respect it because it exists for very altruistic purposes. And the fact that some bad actors are taking advantage of that, we can't condemn Tor because of that, right? And that's just how I feel. We need to move away from that. This is all bad because of the few actors that are doing bad things on it. And that's not the case.
So much, Kevin. I really appreciate you being on, man. Again, always a pleasure hearing you talk, meeting you as well. Anything else, Chris?
I just want to say thank
But anyways, thanks for listening, guys. Feel free to comment on this content if you'd like to hear more. Like, subscribe if you want to hear more content. But this has been the OSINT Output with Chris and Tim.
Tim and Chris.